Hey there. So let's talk about six-figure client engagements, or in some cases, multi six-figure client engagements, maybe consulting clients, coaching clients, professional services clients, PR firms, digital ad agencies, event planning companies, copywriting companies, HR consulting, etc. Let's talk about those engagements specifically. Let's talk about some of the mindset issues that come up for folks when we start talking about six-figure client engagements. Now, that doesn't go for everyone. Certainly, there are folks out there who are already closing and have been closing for maybe many, many years, six-figure and multi-six-figure, even seven-figure. We recently had a client go after and get their first, I think it was eight-figure client engagement. But for a lot of folks, the majority of self-employed professionals, at least here in the United States, this could be a very triggering conversation to have. According to Indeed.com, the average income of a self-employed professional in the United States is about 55,000. It's just over. It's about 55,600 and some odd change in terms of the average annual income of someone who is self-employed. That's actually even a little higher than some of the data out of certain coaching organizations in terms of what the annual income is for someone who's an executive coach or a leadership coach or a team coach. And so that means if we're going to start talking about going after six-figure and multi-six-figure client opportunities, that could mean that we're talking about a scenario in which someone goes from earning, let's say, $55,000 a year total across all their client engagements to earning $100,000 or more off of just one client. And so that is a surefire recipe to start bringing up all sorts of mindset challenges, all sorts of, beliefs that you might not even realize you have, or thoughts or things that you're conflating together, certain perspectives that you're bringing to the process, that despite any sort of how to that we might get into on going after those kinds of client engagements, you're not even going to necessarily see those opportunities if some of these mindset issues are going on for you. So I wanted to take a minute. Hey there, it's good to see you. So I think we just need to talk about some of these mindset challenges. And one thing I want to start off with, though, before I get into just some of the strategic thinking around going after six-figure opportunities, is really just why it's so important. Many, many, many years ago, Newt Gingrich, of all people, shared a parable at a conference he was speaking at. Now, I don't know if this was his parable or if he got it from someone else and who got it from someone else, but it's such a great analogy to talk about the importance of why you have to go after the bigger fish, why you have to go after the bigger opportunities. And he shared this parable that if you think about a lion, or really, he said lion, it really would be the lioness, right? Because it's the lionesses who do the hunting. That if there was this lioness and she was out in the jungle, she was out, out there looking for food for her cubs, she could catch field mice all day long. Every 10 minutes, she would be stealthy enough and have the strength to catch field mice all day, every day. But the problem is, at the end of the day, she would have exerted so much energy catching the field mice that she actually would burn more calories catching the field mice than she's actually consuming with the field mice, because it's just so much energy to go after all of these mice. And so at the end of the day, yeah, she was successful. She caught mice all day long, but she's actually net negative for the day on her caloric intake by catching the field mice, and has nothing to go back and feed her pride, right? She has nothing to bring back to her cubs. And so here's the thing, there are a lot of small business owners right now in the coaching space, in the consulting space, in the professional services space that are being that lioness, going after the field mice, and they're exerting all of this energy all day long. And at the end of the day, they're burned out and they have some wins to show for it, but it's not necessarily enough to sustain their business long term. And it's certainly not enough to be able to go back and have some cubs or oompa loompas or support in the business, right? Like that idea of keeping that machine going in the business. And so what ends up happening is just a grind. It's just a grind, and it depletes you. And we're seeing that more and more. And I think it makes sense, right? I mean, the whole world is really burned out right now. So the alternative is that the lioness, what she does, because she's smart, is she doesn't chase the field mice, right? She looks for the larger opportunities, the bigger fish, if you will, though I guess fish isn't really the best analogy in that case, since we're talking about the lioness. But you got my point, right? Of going after, that larger opportunity that is going to sustain your business long term and gives you not just consistent cash flow, but gives you some breathing room to then be able to find really that next right fit opportunity for your business. So it's really, I think, important to do the math in your business, that sort of caloric math, if you will, of how much energy does it in fact take for you to win the clients that you're winning, and can you sustain that pace, and or can you increase that pace in order to create enough volume to ever get your head above water, to ever be able to put some money into the reserves, that you have 6 months of cash reserve in your business, so that you can hire team members, so that you can get the business coaching and consulting that you need, so that you can invest in the right technology, the right website, the right SEO, all of the things that we need to sustain our business today. And let me tell you, that hamster wheel is going faster and faster and faster. And I'm sure you guys can feel that, right? I'm sure you can feel the pace of how fast things are going in the marketplace today, and just how many places that you need to be. We look at just the energy that we're putting in now to, having a goal of a reel a day over on Instagram. And it's like, and it does require some of my input. It's not something that's entirely outsourceable. So you need the client opportunities that are going to sustain your business. So now let's talk about some of the mindset around that and some of the big mindset things that come up. So I'm going to share these today. And then we have a masterclass actually coming up on July 26th, where we're going to actually get into the details of how do you actually create six-figure opportunities for your business, and how do you do that in a way that it could actually be your norm, not your exception. So we're going to get into some of the brass tacks then. Today, I want to talk about some of the mindset shifts, because you could start making these mindset shifts right now. And then as you come into the masterclass on July 26th, you could have already given this some thought and really be in a place to focus on, okay, you know what? I really sat with those concepts. So now let me look at the how-to piece of doing this. Okay. So first and foremost, one of the things that we hear from folks when we're talking about making the shift to bigger client opportunities is the idea that selling those opportunities is going to be harder. Now, there may be, we could kind of map out and look at, for every, say, six-figure opportunity out there, how many 4 and 5 opportunities are there, and what would be that sliding scale in terms of the sort of opportunity. But I think that would be I know that would be that would be almost like a false assumption or a false calculation, because easily 7 out of 10 times, if not 8 out of 10 times, when a coach or a consultant or a service provider is closing a 4 or a 5-figure opportunity, at least 7 out of 10 times, if not 8 out of 10 times, that opportunity actually should have been 6 figures or more. And I say that not just from a pricing perspective, but I actually say it more from a solution perspective for the client, for the corporate client, because typically there's very little that you can do. There's a very little dent that you can make in an ingrained people problem or process problem or product problem inside of a company with just a 4 or 5-figure investment. Most of the challenges that you guys are out there solving are actually quite complex. They are multi-layered. There are a lot of interdependencies. There are a lot of learned behaviors. There are a lot of contributing factors to those problems. So by and large, when people are closing 4 and 5-figure opportunities, it's not because the problem doesn't require a 6-figure solution. And also, it's not because the problem doesn't warrant a 6-figure solution. And what I mean by that is whatever problem it is that they're talking to you about probably is costing them, conservatively speaking, multiple 6 figures a year. In many cases, it's costing them multi 7 figures a year. And now what we're bringing to the table is we're bringing a hammer when we need a bulldozer, right? Or we need a fleet of bulldozers, and we're trying to get away with solving this problem with just a hammer. So most of the opportunities that you guys are already in conversation about with your prospects and your clients are in fact problems, challenges that both require and can justify a 6-figure or multi 6-figure opportunity. So that's, I think, one of the first things to understand. The next mindset thing to understand is the idea that it is not necessarily, and usually most of the time it's just flat out not easier to sell lower priced opportunities because of who you end up selling them to. Typically, when you're in conversation with someone who's looking for maybe a $3,500, $5,000, $25,000, even $30,000, dollars solution to a problem, you are typically talking to someone in an organization who is not at a truly senior executive level or even really senior leadership level. You're probably talking to someone they're not a first line manager. They're maybe just 1 or 2 rungs above that. So they might be at the senior manager level. They might be at the director level. But typically, if you're talking to someone at that level, you are talking to someone who they themselves have a relatively low money mindset thermostat, right? I'm sure if you're a coach or a consultant, a solopreneur, you've done some mindset work. You understand what I'm saying when I'm talking about your money thermostat. When you're dealing with folks who they have small budgets, their salary is under $200,000 a year, they only have visibility over P&L or budgets in their organizations that are pretty small, their role in their money mindset is equivalent to that, right? Like that's where they are. When you're dealing with a CEO of, let's say, a $50 million company, guess what? Their money mindset is set at a thermostat of at least $50 million, if not many multiples of that when you think about the valuation of their organization and what they've created that's, 2, 5, 10 times greater than that. You are dealing with someone in that senior leadership that numbers like 25 million, 50 million, 100 million, they eat those as part of their, frosted flakes for breakfast in the morning. Meanwhile, you're talking to someone who's, let's say, a senior manager, maybe their base salary is 180,000, maybe at most, they get very small budget decisions that they're able to make. You're dealing with someone who they themselves have a money thermostat that's going to be set much lower. Or they only have a very small delegation of financial authority where they're only allowed to spend, let's say, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. And In addition to that, they have to be very, very judicious in how they spend that money. So now you're in a situation where you are having a sales conversation with someone who has their own maybe money mindset limiting beliefs around what can be spent. Oftentimes, in fact, one of the things we tell our Bold House collective members is that a lot of times when you put a number, a financial number in terms of your proposal, what you're proposing price wise in front of someone who is more junior on the leadership team, they will often first and foremost equate or make relative that price to either their salary or a purchase that they recently made, as opposed to a senior level executive who's going to look at that number in relationship to what the price, what the cost of that problem is on their organization. If you don't believe me about that, just go talk to leadership coaches who are working with managers, senior managers, first time directors, and the work that they do to help try to shift those leaders' perspectives and viewpoints to looking at the impact on the whole organization. Talk to a senior executive about one of their frustrations with folks who are starting at the individual contributor level and coming up in the organization. And one of the things they'll tell you is, the decisions that folks are making, the perspectives they're bringing, they're not thinking in terms of the big picture. Well, when you're selling into that level of the organization, guess what you're doing? You're selling into that money mindset of the organization. So, seller beware here in that regard. The other thing is, if you're selling to people who have that sort of maybe limiting some limiting perspectives around budget, around dollars, they have limited authority, they're bargain hunters, is that really an easier sale? Like, let's just think about this for just a second. Is it really easier to try to convince that person to spend 10, 15, $20,000? Or is it easier to talk to the CFO, to talk to the chief people officer, to talk to the CFO, to talk to the CEO, to talk to the chief risk officer, to talk to the CISO or whoever it is, the chief marketing officer, whoever is in that C-suite, who understands the true profit and loss statement, who understands that if they don't fix X problem, how it's going to cost their organizations hundreds of thousands, if not millions, if not tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars? Is it easier to sell that person a solution for $100,000 that's going to fix maybe a multi-million dollar problem? Or is it easier to sell someone who really isn't comfortable purchasing anything over, say, $25,000, and you're trying to sell a 6-part workshop course to them for $30,000? Like, in which scenario is it actually easier? It's amazing what happens when you start thinking about, wait a second, why do I think that's easier selling to basically the penny pinchers or the folks who, have they have to stretch their budget because they don't have that much authority, and they have to think about, and if they spend it over here, they can't spend it over there, versus the C-suite who can ultimately move things wherever they want to in terms of financials. So I think that's the first thing, is to understand from a mindset perspective. If you're thinking it's just easier to sell, it's often much harder sales conversations when you're dealing sometimes with the smaller sort of brass tacks purchases, versus being able to have a much more strategic conversation about those more involved engagements. So what you're assigning as easy versus hard, really give that some thought. Okay. Really, really, really give that some thought. Another mindset issue that comes up around 6-figure engagements, and this one is kind of fun to dissect a little bit, so stick with me here. This limiting belief that a lot of coaches, consultants, and service providers have, that the expertise that they're providing isn't worth it in terms of worth a 6-figure, let alone a multi-6-figure investment, that it's not worth it. And what's really, really fascinating about this one is we like to kind of peel back the layers of the onion with our clients. And when we get into this discussion with so many coaches, so many consultants, so many service providers, and we say, okay, walk us through some of your client engagements. And let's say, they worked with a very, very small business owner, maybe someone who had maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people in their team. And the business owner was only able to invest, let's say, $12,000 in a coaching engagement. And so we say, okay, so tell us about the results that you were able to achieve with this business owner who invested only $12,000 with you, and you only got to maybe have 2 coaching calls a month with them. They didn't get to go on some 3-day retreat with you. You didn't get to do everything you would have wanted to do with them. They invested 12,000 with you. They worked with you for a few months. Tell us about the results that you got. And then we just listen. And we will hear from coaches and consultants, we will hear all of these amazing results. Like the person will get going at first, will say, well, and then they start talking like, and another thing, their marriage changed. Another thing, their relationships with their kids changed. And, they got healthier. They started, meditating and working out, and they felt like they had more control, and they took a vacation. They hadn't been on a vacation in 10 years, and they took a vacation. And also they're finally saying no to clients they don't want to be working with, and they're charging more, and they are taking more time off. They're setting boundaries. They let go of 2 team members that were just a drain on their organization and were stressing them out. And it's just like on and on and on and on and on, all of these amazing results that we hear. And then we say, so let me get this straight. And how much money was this small business owner making? And then maybe let's say the small business owner was making all of $180,000 a year or something like that. And I'm like, so let me get this straight. For just $12,000 and 4 months of time with not multiple strategy days, just 45-minute coaching calls with someone who was making about $180,000 a year, who didn't have much money to then take any ideas that were coming up in your coaching sessions to then go, implement. They didn't have just, funny money. They could just throw it problems. Despite being very limited in their resources, being very limited in what they could invest in working with you, being very limited in the amount of time, therefore, they were able to get with you, you were able to create a CVS receipt long list of results for that startup entrepreneur. That's what you're telling me, that for this little bit of money, with this little bit of resource, in this little bit of time, you were able to create this many results. Like that's what, this much input for this much output. That's what you're telling me. So what would you be able to create for your clients if they were able to invest $250,000 with you, and you were able to bring some other experts to bear, and you were able to do some retreats, and you were able to do some strategy days, and you were able to send them welcome gifts, and you were able to do assessments with them, and you were able to make all the materials look amazing because you had the budget in a $250,000 engagement to actually create the engagement the way that you've always dreamed of being able to create, instead of having to try and create these huge results on a shoestring budget and a very short runway of working with the client. Like, what? This doesn't make any sense. So the idea that it's harder to win, a big client and then be able to deliver the work for them when you're actually funded, right? When you're actually funded to do the work the right way. And they now are even more invested in the results because they have bigger skin in the game. Like, let's think about all of that on the table. And the fact that when you're sitting in front of a client who's ready to invest at that level, who is ready to put that much skin in the game, that you're able to say, what's amazing about this is we have been able to create 100% improvement in X, 125% improvement in Y, and a 35% improvement in A and B and C. And we have done that with startups who have very limited budgets, who have very limited resources to be able to implement the ideas and the mindsets and the strategies and the principles that we're talking about. And so we've been able to do that with organizations much smaller. In your organization, it's a larger organization, so the results are going to be bigger. And obviously, we're going to need more time with you. There are more nuances. We're going to, bring all the resources to bear. But we've been able to accomplish these outcomes even with organizations that had limited time and limited resource and were not as well positioned as you are to achieve these results. Do you see what I'm saying? So the idea that that it's not you've only done it with a solopreneur, or you've only done it with a micro business owner, or you've only done it with a local company in your backyard. It's actually because you have been able to create the results, even though they were so resource constrained, that it means that you are going to blow it out of the water when you are able to actually be properly funded and able to bring your full expertise to bear to match what the problem actually warrants, what it deserves, what it requires to solve it. So I just kind of want to recap where we are right now. The first thing we've done here is really dispel the idea that we should be chasing mice around the jungle and that somehow that's going to provide the caloric intake that our business needs to really be healthy and thrive. And we also talked about the idea that selling, basically bargain basement programs to folks who are limited in their perspective of the impact on the organization, limited in their authority, limited in their budget, does not necessarily mean it's going to be an easier sales conversation. In fact, a lot of times it's harder because they're actually not buying. I should have said this earlier. They're not buying strategically. They're not buying based on outcome and result. They're actually based on, there's a lot of fear in those buying decisions. And then we talked about the idea that just because you have created opportunity outcomes and results and opportunities for smaller businesses, solo business owners, micro business owners, whatever you want to call it, that somehow that doesn't give you the street cred that you need to actually do it on a bigger scale, when in fact the complete opposite is true. It actually means you're a ninja. That's what that means, that you're a ninja and that you were able to make an image combined with a magician, and you were able to create magic with limited resources. So I want to talk about one more mindset before we wrap up. And if this is helpful to you, make sure you come join us on our masterclass. It's a free masterclass, by the way, on July 26th, but I'll be doing I'll have slides and really kind of break down some of the steps of winning corporate clients or any type of B2B client, organizational client, nonprofit, mid-market, small enterprise at the six-figure or multi-six-figure level. So we'll really get into that. But I want to talk about one more mindset before I send you guys back to enjoy your Sunday evenings. And I want to talk about the importance of the client level of commitment that comes in, and sometimes the fear of being able to deliver at that level. And I know this comes up for some folks because the idea of, if an organization is paying me $130,000, I'll actually pick $183,000. For some reason, that's a magical number around the Bold House world. We have had so many clients that when they start getting into six-figure and multi-six-figure opportunities, it comes in like 180, 182, 183,000. And I think one of the reasons that is because there's like the number 200,000, I think, might scare some folks. So they kind of dial it back just a little, but get it close. So I think that's something funny that happens. But let's say it's $183,000 client engagement that you land. This idea of this client is investing $183,000 with my organization. And so now I feel a lot of pressure to deliver, right? And I understand that. And in fact, that makes me happy to hear that you feel a little bit of pressure, because that means that you're taking your business seriously, that you're not treating it as a hobby. I can't tell you how many people we bump into in this industry that do not take their businesses seriously. It's unbelievable. I mean, we have had so many bad experiences, and in fact, most of the time, we will try to find an organization that's more established if we're going to spend a certain amount of money, only because we've seen people not take it seriously. So the idea that you're going to take it seriously and that you feel a little bit of pressure, good. That makes you a responsible business owner. It means that you understand that an organization is conducting a transaction with you and they're expecting you to conduct yourself in a certain way. So I actually first and foremost see that as a good thing, if you're feeling that, because it means that you're going to care. It means that you're going to give the client the attention that the client deserves when they're working with you at that level. But it shouldn't cross over into sort of a crushing overwhelm. So here's some things I have to say about that from a mindset perspective. The first thing is, they're not hiring you because you're an expert in their industry or because you're an expert in their field or you're even an expert in their company specifically. They're hiring you because you are an expert in the thing that you do. So this isn't about you showing them how much you know about every last detail of their organization. This is about you bringing your expertise, your knowledge, your entire track record of being a professional to bear in terms of showing up for this client. It also means that if it is a multi-layered engagement, which usually if you're selling a six-figure engagement, and again, we'll get more into this on the masterclass, but typically that means that you're actually just doing multiple components that you've probably done for other clients individually, meaning it might include multiple training workshops, it might include coaching multiple people, it might include multiple strategy days, it might include an executive retreat, it might include a special project as part of all of that you need to put something together for them. Maybe they want to look at getting employees to get more involved with certain efforts, or one of the things that's going on for a lot of companies right now, just as a real world example, is they're trying to educate their employees that the whole idea of 2 weeks notice is bull crap in terms of professional organizations. If you're running the popcorn machine at the local movie theater, 2 weeks notice is fine. If you've been with an organization for 5 years, running, a division on the side of corporate communications, yeah, 2 weeks doesn't cut it. That's not acceptable in a professional role. So let's say as part of like culture transformation work that you were doing with an organization, they wanted your help putting something together around communicating to employees and getting them to understand how they should be thinking about when it's time for them to explore their next role, what the best way is to handle that. Let's say that was part of your $183,000 engagement that you were doing with a company. When they are investing with you at this level, it doesn't have to be all you. It doesn't have to be all you. You don't have to deliver all of it. One of the really brilliant things that happens when you start getting into the six-figure and especially the multi-six-figure opportunities with clients is that you actually now have the budget, and actually you have really the reason to bring on bench members, independent contractors, other experts who can work under your brand as independent contractors to help deliver that engagement. And this is something really interesting that happens for folks at this level, is how much fun their business finally becomes. Because what no one tells the person who's thinking about going out and being the solopreneur is that it's a very solo journey. It's one of the reasons my masterminds are so wonderful. It's one of the reasons I think we all spend so much time on social media. But a lot of times in the early days of your business, you lose the sounding board that was such a critical part of your professional career. When you're able to create these multi-six-figure opportunities, you now have not just the budget, but really the bandwidth and the need to bring on some various specialists. Maybe it's some specialists who run certain assessments like a DISC assessment or a Colby assessment or some type of workplace safety assessment, depending on your field. Maybe you can bring on copywriters. Maybe you could bring on an internal communications consultant as a bench member. And it creates your little, basically, tiger team to go after this engagement, and you're not doing it all alone. And I think that's a really great moment for a lot of people when they're not doing it by themselves anymore. But you have to win those opportunities, right? To have the opportunity to essentially have your tiger team of bench members working under your brand on that client engagement. We can teach you guys how to do that. We have a whole program on that. I'm not going to get into that today, but the idea is what happens, the possibilities and the breathing room that open for you so that you're like, oh, it's not all just on me. And in fact, you want to make sure it's not, because if it is, you'll end up creating a job for yourself. And that's the last thing that you want to do. The whole idea of creating six-figure and multi-six-figure opportunities is that you're actually able to create some breathing room. You're actually able to get the runway that you need to go get even more opportunities so that you're not stuck in that feast or famine and you're not stuck running around chasing field mice. So if you're feeling a little bit of that overwhelm, let me take that off of you, that they're looking to you to really be that project manager. There's actually a funny expression in the corporate space, one throat to choke, which is the idea of like, they really just want one point of contact, and they want to be able to work with someone that, if there are other people working on the project, that you're kind of managing that. So more than likely, when you get to the multi-six-figure opportunity level, it's not going to just be you. You're actually going to create a bench under you that you're going to be able to leverage and have a lot of fun bringing an amazing solution to this organization. The last thing I'll say about this is that when a client is investing six figures or multi-six figures or even seven figures or more with you, they really have a lot of skin in the game. And so because they have a lot of skin in the game, they're going to be a great partner to you. They're going to understand that this is a priority, that they're going to have meetings with you. They're going to have to respond to your emails. They're going to have to be involved in partners in this transformation that they're bringing you in to help them with. And so typically what we have found 99.9% of the time is that the clients actually, since they really want this to be a success, are really committed to working with you. And you actually have less problems with clients. And in fact, I think about some of the nightmares over the years, and we have, actually, I'm going to jinx myself, so I'm not even going to finish that statement. But I think about the early days of when I started my company back in 2006. So it's been an awfully long time now, 16 years ago. So when I started my company in 2006, I remember some of the sort of early challenges. And I remember one of the clients who hired me. And it was like one of my very, very, very first small business owner clients outside of my corporate clients that I had taken on. And I think she invested all of like $380 to work with me. I mean, we don't sell anything for $380. We probably haven't sold anything for $380 in, I don't even know, 5 years, 10 years. I don't know. But it was $380 and some change. And it was at a local women's conference that she came to, and she bought something. And I did a couple of coaching sessions with her at a coffee shop. And this was probably 2007, maybe early 2008, but probably not even then. And it was like the worst 3 hours of my career. I still remember it. Literally the worst. Now that's, an extreme example, but I'm telling you, the more that your clients invest with you, the more they're coming to the table with the right leadership inside the organization, with the right understanding of just how much work something's going to have to be, and that they have a role in creating that outcome as well. So now, it's also incumbent upon you in your kickoff meetings and your sales conversations, et cetera, to remind them of that and use that as part of your red velvet rope to make sure that that client is truly committed. But 99.9% of the time, that's exactly what you're going to find, is that these are clients who they understand that this is important, and they're going to bring the right team members. They're going to dedicate the amount of time they need. They're really going to be a partner with you on this versus much less committed clients who are barely investing anything, and somehow they think you're going to be a magician and you're going to be able to show up in a half-day workshop and fix all of their turnover problems or all of their team conflict problems. And by the way, they're so busy they don't even have time to pre-survey the workshop employee attendees, and they don't have time to look at anything except for the night before the training. All of a sudden they want to review your slides and they have 28 changes to your training slides that you were planning to use the next day. Like, that's what you get when you're at the $3,500 level a lot of times. Conversely, when you're at $350,000, they're showing up in a very different mindset with a very different commitment level and a very different perspective about just how important this is to their organization. And so so if you start to feel that sort of fear, I can tell you, as soon as you start working with them, you're going to realize these people are really involved. And I'm actually not bearing this cross by myself. This is something that's going to be a partnership, and I'm going to treat it like the partnership that it really is. And they're going to treat it like the partnership that it is. So there you go. So some of the big mindset things that come up when it comes to winning six-figure clients or working with six-figure clients or multi-six-figure clients. And of course, those mindsets, all of that goes for and above in terms of seven-figure or eight-figure or beyond opportunities that are out there for small business owners as well. We see them all the time. So we have a training, as I mentioned, coming up on Tuesday, July 26th at 2 p.m. I believe it's on the page. I'm pretty sure it's at 2 p.m. It's a time we don't normally use. That's why I'm hesitating, but it's at 2 p.m. The URL is right there on the screen if you want to join us. We're really going to get into, I'm trying to cover some of the mindset stuff before we get on to that training because we have so much to talk about. But we're going to get into what are the 5 steps to creating these larger opportunities so that you're bringing in clients that really can sustain your business and you're able to actually do the work in the world at the level that you are truly meant to do it. And I think I'll end on that thought. When you're working with clients who are not investing at a high level with you, it means that you're not able to do the work you're meant to do at a high level, right? There's an equitable exchange of value that needs to happen. And so, I have to say, I think even the pandemic especially really accelerated this. We were already on this path, but I feel like the pandemic accelerated certain energetic things that were happening by multiple decades. And I think that idea, if you're feeling that you have more to give, not more grind to give, I don't mean that, but you have more to give in terms of a deeper level that you would like to see your clients transforming at. Well, the first is the opening is there now for that to happen. And I'll share specifically what I mean by that on July 26th. And in addition to that, I know that a lot of folks are really feeling this idea of wanting to go deeper with their clients. And the way to go deeper with your clients is to create longer engagements where the client is even more invested. That's how you're able to do even deeper work with your clients. And I know for a lot of you, that is just as important as the financial side. And I think that's great because that is the other side of the coin, right? That is why we're all here. So, the money is just sort of the energetic doorway to being able to more fully manifest the transformation in this world that you're here to lead. And so I'd give you that invitation to really think about that is you need a bigger door to walk through to fully manifest that purpose. And that's really one of the reasons why we talk so much about the financial side, because we know it's a conduit to the impact, to the purpose, to the transformation, and they're completely tied together, right? So there you go. And there is a recording. There will be a recording. We'll definitely send that out after. Usually, especially because it's on Zoom now, it takes us a couple of hours to get that rendering and up on a page. But yes, if you're not able to be there on the 26th, although I will also say I put it on the calendar because these days things are constantly changing. I feel like I can't make it through a day without something on my schedule not shifting. So I'd put it there just in case something shifts. But if not, there will definitely be a recording. And I think it's, this is one of those conversations we all need to be looking at right now in terms of really creating those doorways to have the impact that we want to have with these organizations or with whatever type of client that you're serving. What is the doorway to be able to make that connection and be able to go deeper, have a more lasting transformation, but also from an energetic level, how are we going deeper? And the good news is, organizations are really craving that right now. And I have nothing but good news to report out of some insider conversations that we recently had up in New York City. So, really excited to share that with you guys on July 26th. So, you guys have the URL. I'm actually really thankful. My kids have, like, 5 friends upstairs right now. I thought it was going to sound like a herd of elephants when I popped on here, but they've been really good. But I'm going to go grab them some pizza. And I hope you have a fantastic rest of your evening. And I will see you guys on July 26th, if not before then, right here on LinkedIn. Have a great evening.